Act with my son. Marry him. Victor Grayson's mocking laugh echoes through Manhattan's glittering gala. His champagne glass pointed at Nia Jackson, a black maid in a vibrant sea green uniform, her sleek hair tied in a neat bun. A coffee spill on his pristine suit sparks his cruel bet, challenging her to perform with his heir, Ethan, before a sneering elite crowd, oblivious that Nia harbors a dazzling secret. What lies behind her calm gaze? Can a maid outshine a billionaire's arrogance? Her hidden past might just rewrite this night's script. Subscribe to uncover this saga of defiance and share where you're watching from, day or night. Will Nia's brilliance shatter Victor's prejudice? What's your prediction for this tale? Comment 1 if this story grips you, 0 if it falls flat. Stay tuned. Will scorn turn to awe? The Gilded Forks chandelier-lit ballroom shimmered with Manhattan's elite, a constellation of 150 power brokers, tycoons, socialites, and a sharp-eyed theater critic, sipping vintage champagne amid clinking, crystal and murmured deals. The air buzzed with the self-assured hum of Grayson Enterprises' corporate gala, a showcase of wealth and dominance. Waitstaff glided like shadows, their presence barely noted by the glittering crowd. Among them, Nia Jackson, a beautiful black woman, moved with quiet grace, her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, her vibrant sea green uniform catching the light like a defiant spark in the opulent haze. Her dark eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the room, betraying a depth the revelers couldn't fathom. Nia balanced a silver tray of steaming coffee, her hands steady despite the weight of countless eyes dismissing her as mere scenery. She navigated the crowd, her steps measured until a misstep, a slight brush against a guest's elbow, sent her tray tipping. A cascade of dark coffee splashed onto the pristine white suit of Victor Grayson, the billionaire patriarch of Grayson Enterprises. The room froze, the chatter dying as the stains spread like an accusation across his tailored lapel. Gasps rippled through the guests, their gazes darting between the towering magnate and the maid who dared disrupt his perfection. Victor's face twisted, his gray eyes flashing with indignation. "Clumsy fool!" he barked, his voice cutting through the silence like a whip. He rose from his velvet chair, looming over Nia, his champagne flute raised as if toasting her disgrace. "You can't even serve coffee right, can you?" The crowd tittered, a cruel chorus feeding his ego. Nia stood rooted, her tray now empty, her fingers curling slightly as she met his glare with a calm that unnerved a few onlookers. Her beauty, framed by that sea green uniform, seemed to glow under the chandelier's light, a quiet defiance in her posture. "Dad, please," whispered Ethan Grayson, the 30-year-old heir, his lean frame tense as he stepped forward from a nearby table. His blue eyes, softer than his father's, flickered with embarrassment, his tailored jacket creasing as he gestured toward Nia. It was an accident. Victor ignored him, his lips curling into a sneer as he surveyed Nia's apron, the badge of her supposed inferiority. "An accident?" he mocked, turning to the crowd for approval. "This one's been fooled by her kind before. Trust me, they're never as innocent as they seem." The words landed like a slap, their veiled prejudice drawing uneasy chuckles from some guests and raised eyebrows from others. Lydia Hale, a theater critic with a reputation for cutting wit, leaned forward in her seat, her silver hair glinting as she whispered to a companion, "This could get interesting." Nia's heart pounded, not from fear, but from a fire kindling within, a fire she'd banked for too long. Beneath her composed exterior, she was Nia Brooks, once a Broadway supernova whose voice had silenced theaters until a vicious scandal snuffed out her star. That past, buried deep, stirred now, whispering of stages and spotlights. Victor, emboldened by the crowd's attention, stepped closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "Let's make this amusing," he declared, his eyes locked on Nia. "Act a scene with my son, and if you manage it without tripping over your own incompetence, I'll marry you to him." The room erupted in laughter, a wave of mockery that crashed over Nia. Guests covered their mouths, feigning shock, while others clapped, treating her humiliation as sport. Ethan's face flushed, his jaw tight. "Dad, this is ridiculous," he hissed, But Victor waved him off, his grin widening as he sipped his champagne, drunk on his own power. Nia set her tray down, her movements deliberate, almost theatrical. She wiped her hands on her apron, the sea-green fabric catching the light, and straightened, her posture radiating a dignity that silenced a few of the jeers. Her eyes, dark and piercing, met Victor's with an intensity that made him falter for a split second. The crowd didn't notice, but Lydia Hale did, her pen pausing over her notepad. Nia's voice, clear and steady, cut through the din. "I accept your bet, Mr. Grayson," she said, each word sharp as a blade. "But let's make it fair. If I perform, you'll owe me more than a jest." The room stilled, the laughter choking off as guests exchanged glances. Victor blinked, his arrogance momentarily shaken. "What did you say?" he demanded, stepping closer, as if her audacity was a personal affront. Nia held her ground, her bun gleaming under the lights, her beauty a quiet challenge to his scorn. "I said I accept," she repeated, her voice carrying a weight that made the chandeliers seem to dim. "But when I outperform your expectations, you'll apologize for judging me by my job and my skin." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some guests shifting uncomfortably, others leaning forward, sensing a shift in the air. Ethan's eyes widened, a flicker of admiration breaking through his unease. Victor laughed, a harsh, forced sound, but it lacked its earlier venom. "Bold words for a maid," he sneered, turning to the crowd. "Shall we see how long she lasts?" The guests clapped, some hesitantly, as the gala's polished veneer cracked, revealing the raw edge of prejudice beneath. Nia's heart raced, not with doubt, but with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The stage was set, not just in the ballroom, but in her soul, where memories of roaring crowds and blazing spotlights stirred. She was no longer just Nia Jackson, the maid in sea green. She was Nia Brooks, a legend waiting to reclaim her light. As Victor smirked, oblivious to the storm he'd unleashed, Nia's calm gaze held a promise. This bet would cost him more than he could imagine. The air in the Gilded Forks ballroom crackled with a charged silence. Nia Jackson's bold words, "When I outperform your expectations, you'll apologize," hanging like a sword over Victor Grayson's head. The 150 elite guests, their champagne flutes paused mid-sip, shifted in their velvet seats, sensing a shift in the night's script. Nia stood unwavering, her vibrant sea-green uniform catching the chandelier's glow. Her sleek hair bun, a crown of quiet defiance. Her dark eyes locked onto Victor, whose smirk flickered, betraying a flicker of unease beneath his polished arrogance. The crowd's murmurs grew, a mix of intrigue and mockery, as the private stage at the room's heart, a platform usually reserved for Grayson Enterprises' self-congratulatory skits, loomed like a battlefield. Victor recovered swiftly, his laughter booming, a calculated performance to reclaim control. "Outperform?" he scoffed, swirling his whiskey, the amber liquid glinting like his malice. "You, a maid, think you can outshine anyone? Let's raise the stakes." He strode to the stage's edge, his white suit still marred by the coffee stain, now a badge of his vendetta. "Perform a tragic scene from a streetcar named Desire with my son Ethan. If you can match my wife's theater lessons, I'll keep my word, marriage and all." The crowd erupted in cruel chuckles, guests whispering bets on Nia's inevitable failure. A man in a tuxedo offered $500 on her stumbling within minutes. A socialite doubled it, smirking. Ethan Grayson, his face taut with discomfort, stepped closer to his father, his voice low but firm. "This is wrong, Dad. She's just doing her job." His blue eyes darted to Nia, a silent apology in their depths, but Victor waved him off, his grin widening. "Wrong? It's entertainment, son. You're too soft for this world." The words carried a deeper sting, a glimpse into Victor's fear, losing his iron grip on his family, his legacy. Ethan's jaw clenched, his tailored jacket straining as he fought the urge to argue further, his gaze lingering on Nia's composed figure, her beauty a quiet rebuke to the room's scorn. Lydia Hale, the theater critic, leaned back in her chair, her silver hair catching the light as she murmured to a companion, "This'll be a spectacle, but for whom?" Her pen tapped her notepad, her initial amusement tinged with curiosity. The crowd's laughter swelled, a wave of entitlement. But Nia remained still, her hands smoothing her sea-green apron with a precision that hinted at something more. A discipline honed far beyond this gilded cage. She stepped forward, her movements fluid, almost choreographed, drawing a few raised eyebrows. "I accept your challenge, Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice a velvet blade slicing through the din. "But when I surpass your wife's performance, you'll apologize publicly for judging me by my work and my skin." The room gasped, the audacity of her demand rippling like a shockwave. Victor's eyes narrowed, his whiskey glass pausing midair. "You've got nerve," he said, his tone laced with grudging respect, quickly masked by a sneer. "Fine. An apology, if you somehow pull this off. But when you fail, and you will, you'll crawl out of here with nothing." The crowd roared, some clapping, others whispering, their bets doubling as the stage lights flickered on, casting Nia in a stark glow. Her bun gleamed, her posture unyielding, as if she'd stood under such lights 1,000 times before. Ethan moved toward Nia, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to do this. He's gone too far." His concern was genuine, but Nia's eyes met his, a spark of resolve igniting within. "I choose to," she replied, her tone steady, carrying a weight that made Ethan pause. He saw something in her gaze, a fire, a memory, that hinted at a past far grander than this moment. The crowd didn't see it, but Lydia Hale's pen stilled, her sharp eyes narrowing as Nia's stance evoked a faint, unplaceable memory. Victor clapped his hands, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Let's get this farce started," he bellowed, signaling the staff to prepare the stage. A minimalist backdrop, a faded curtain, a single chair, was hastily set. The stage's simplicity a stark contrast to the gala's opulence. The guests leaned forward, their faces a mix of glee and disdain, treating Nia as a jester in their court. But Nia's mind was elsewhere, slipping into a place where spotlights burned and audiences held their breath. She remembered nights when her voice had woven magic, when her name, Nia Brooks, had drawn thunderous applause, before a colleague's betrayal in a vicious scandal stole it all. That fire, long buried, flared now, her heart pounding not with fear but with purpose. "Place your bets," Victor called, circling the room like a ringmaster, his voice dripping with mockery. "1,000 says she chokes before the first line." The crowd laughed, coins and promises exchanging hands, as waitstaff moved quietly, their faces tight with secondhand shame. One guest, a woman in a diamond choker, whispered, "She's just a maid. What does she know about theater?" But Nia's calm was unshakable, her sea-green uniform a beacon in the dimming lights. She stepped onto the stage, her movements deliberate, each step echoing a rhythm only she could hear. As the stage lights brightened, Nia's gaze swept the room, lingering on Victor's smug face, then on Ethan's conflicted one. She felt the weight of their stares, their assumptions, but also the pulse of her own strength. Once she'd commanded theaters, now she'd command this room. The crowd's laughter faded, replaced by a tense anticipation, as if they sensed the air shifting. Lydia Hale's pen hovered, her expression unreadable, while Ethan stood frozen, caught between loyalty to his father and an instinct to protect Nia. Victor, oblivious, raised his glass. "Begin," he commanded, unaware that his bet was about to unravel in ways he couldn't imagine. The stage lights flared, bathing Nia Jackson in a stark glow that seemed to peel away the years. Her vibrant sea-green uniform shimmered, a defiant beacon against the faded curtain behind her, her sleek hair bun catching the light like a polished obsidian crown. The Gilded Forks elite crowd leaned forward, their mocking whispers fading into a tense hush, their bets hanging heavy in the air. Victor Grayson stood at the room's edge, his whiskey glass clutched tight, his smirk a brittle mask. Ethan Grayson lingered near the stage, his blue eyes flickering with unease and something softer. Curiosity, perhaps, watching Nia's poised stillness. She stood alone, the single chair beside her, a prop that felt both foreign and achingly familiar, as if it belonged to a life she'd buried. Nia's breath steadied, her heart pounding not with fear but with a rhythm that echoed distant applause. Her mind slipped back, unbidden, to a night when she was Nia Brooks, Broadway's blazing star. The Lyceum Theater's velvet seats had brimmed with enraptured faces, her voice as Blanche Dubois weaving heartbreak into every syllable, drawing tears and thunderous ovations. She'd been untouchable, her name in lights, critics calling her a revelation, until a colleague's envy sparked a lie. A fabricated theft accusation, whispered to producers, spiraled into a scandal that shattered her career. The headlines had stung worse than the loss. Broadway darlings fall from grace. She'd fled the spotlight, trading stages for shadows, surviving on odd jobs, her heart a locked vault of broken dreams. Now under the gilded fork's unforgiving lights, those dreams stirred, clawing their way back. Nia's fingers brushed her apron, her movements subtle but precise, a dancer's warm-up disguised as fidgeting. She stretched, her shoulders rolling back, her posture shifting into something regal, as if the stage itself recognized her. The crowd didn't notice, their eyes clouded by prejudice. But one man did. Marcus, a wiry waiter with graying temples, paused near the stage, his tray of empty glasses forgotten. His weathered face softened, a spark of recognition flaring as he watched Nia's deliberate grace. He'd seen it before, years ago, at the Lyceum, when Nia Brooks had held 1,000 souls spellbound. "Miss," Marcus whispered, sidling closer under the guise of adjusting a tablecloth, his voice low to avoid the crowd's ears. "Nia Brooks, ain't it? I saw you at the Lyceum. You were magic." His eyes, warm with admiration, met hers, and Nia's breath caught. Someone knew. After years of anonymity, of hiding her light to survive, someone saw her. "You're no maid," he murmured, glancing at Victor's smug figure across the room. "You're a star. Don't let him forget it." Nia's lips curved, a faint smile that held both gratitude and resolve. "Keep that quiet, Marcus," she whispered back, her voice steady but charged. "But get your phone ready. You'll want to record this." Marcus nodded, slipping his phone from his pocket, his movements discreet as he positioned himself near the stage's edge. The crowd's murmurs grew, their impatience mounting, but Nia's focus was ironclad. She felt the weight of their stares, their bets, $500, $1,000 more, wagered on her failure. Yet each scornful glance fueled her, a reminder of every door slammed shut, every dream stolen by lies. Victor clapped sharply, his voice booming. "Enough stalling! Let's see this maid play actress." The crowd laughed, a cruel ripple. But Lydia Hale, the theater critic, tilted her head, her pen hovering over her notepad. Something in Nia's stance, her squared shoulders, her centered grace, pricked at Lydia's memory, though she couldn't place it. "This might not be the farce we expected," she murmured to her companion, her silver hair glinting as she leaned forward. Ethan, standing just off stage, caught Nia's eye, his expression torn between duty to his father and a growing respect for her courage. "You sure about this?" he whispered, his voice almost lost in the crowd's din. "I've never been surer," Nia replied, her tone soft but unyielding, like a blade sheathed in velvet. She stepped toward the chair, her sea-green uniform catching every light, her bun a perfect silhouette against the backdrop. Her mind raced, not with doubt, but with clarity. She saw the Lyceum stage, felt the heat of spotlights, heard the hush of 1,000 breaths waiting for her first line. The scandal had taken her career, her name, but not her craft. That she'd guarded fiercely, practicing in empty rooms, whispering lines to herself in the dark, rebuilding what betrayal had broken. The crowd's laughter faded, replaced by a restless anticipation. Victor, oblivious to the shift, raised his glass. "Let's see how long she lasts," he taunted, his voice laced with venom. But Nia's eyes held a fire he couldn't see, a spark that had once lit up Broadway. She remembered the nights when her voice had carried pain and truth, when audiences had risen to their feet, moved to tears. That power surged now, her heart a drumbeat, her body a vessel for a story she'd never stop telling. As the stage manager signaled the start, Nia closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, letting the past flood in. She wasn't just a maid facing a billionaire's bet. She was Nia Brooks, a legend reborn, ready to turn this stage into her battlefield. The crowd's bets, Victor's scorn, even Ethan's hesitant support, all faded as she prepared to speak. Marcus's phone was ready, capturing not just her, but the moment when a room full of prejudice would face its reckoning. The stage lights pulsed, casting Nia Jackson in a halo of stark white, her sea-green uniform a vivid flame against the faded curtain. Her sleek hair, tied in a neat bun, gleamed like polished jet, framing her poised beauty as she stood beside the lone chair, its simplicity a canvas for her impending alchemy. The Gilded Forks elite crowd, 150 strong, held their breath, their earlier jeers replaced by a restless quiet, as if the room itself sensed a reckoning. Victor Grayson leaned against a pillar, his whiskey glass tight in his grip, his smirk a fragile mask of control. Ethan Grayson, positioned awkwardly across from Nia, shifted in his tailored jacket, his blue eyes darting between her calm resolve and the crowd's predatory gaze. The air thrummed with anticipation, a taut string ready to snap. Nia's fingers brushed the chair, grounding her as she drew a breath, her heart sinking with a rhythm only she could hear. The stage manager signaled, and the first notes of a soft piano underscored the silence, a nod to a streetcar named Desire's tragic wait. Ethan, his voice hesitant, began as Stanley, his lines stilted but earnest. "You think I'm going to let you play me?" he said, his delivery faltering under the crowd's scrutiny. Nia, as Blanche Dubois, stepped forward, her posture shifting, a subtle tilt of her head, a softening of her shoulders, that transformed her from maid to enigma. "I don't play games, as Stanley," she replied, her voice low, raw, laced with a sorrow that gripped the room like a vice. The crowd stilled, their champagne flutes forgotten, as Nia's words wove a spell. Her gestures, precise yet fluid, carried the weight of 1,000 rehearsals, each movement a brushstroke painting Blanche's fragile defiance. Ethan, caught in her orbit, found his own performance lifting, his lines sharper as he fed off her intensity. The stage became their world, the chair a symbol of Blanche's crumbling illusions, Nia's sea-green uniform an ironic contrast to her commanding presence. Lydia Hale, the theater critic, leaned forward, her silver hair catching the light, her pen frozen mid-note. "This is no amateur," she whispered to her companion, her earlier mockery replaced by a dawning awe. Victor's smirk faltered, his gray eyes narrowing as Nia's voice rose, each syllable a dagger of truth. "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers," she said, her delivery haunting, her eyes glistening with a pain that felt too real. The line, Blanche's iconic plea, carried Nia's own story. Years of betrayal, of surviving on the margins, of kindness withheld by a world quick to judge. The crowd, once eager to see her fail, sat transfixed, their bets forgotten as her performance peeled away their assumptions. A woman in a diamond choker dabbed her eyes. A tycoon's laughter died in his throat. Even Ethan paused, his next line lost, mesmerized by the woman before him. Eleanor Grayson, Victor's wife, stood near the back, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. A theater enthusiast who'd taken lessons from elite coaches, she recognized the artistry in Nia's every move, a mastery she could never match. "She's better than me," Eleanor murmured to a friend, her voice barely audible, her admiration laced with unease. Victor, catching her words, stiffened, his whiskey glass trembling slightly. "Who is this woman?" he muttered, his confidence unraveling as the crowd's attention shifted, no longer his to command. Nia's performance deepened, her voice weaving through Blanche's desperation with a rawness that bared her own scars. She moved with a grace that belied her maid's uniform, her bun a regal crown under the lights, her beauty a quiet rebellion against the room's prejudice. Each line she spoke, each glance, each pause, carried the weight of a life stolen, now reclaimed. The piano's notes swelled, mirroring her intensity, and the crowd leaned forward, their earlier scorn replaced by a collective breath as if they feared breaking the moment. Lydia's pen scratched furiously now, her eyes locked on Nia. "I've seen this before," she whispered, her memory straining for a connection she couldn't yet grasp. Ethan, finding his rhythm, matched Nia's energy, his Stanley gaining depth as her Blanche pulled him into her world. The stage, once a platform for Victor's cruel jest, had become Nia's domain. her every word a challenge to the room's hierarchy. The guests, their bets now a distant shame, sat spellbound, their applause withheld only by the shock of what they witnessed. Victor's grip on his glass tightened, his face a mask of confusion and dread. "This can't be happening," he hissed, his voice lost in the piano's crescendo. Nia's eyes, blazing with purpose, met his for a fleeting moment, and in that glance he saw not a maid, but a force he'd underestimated. Her performance wasn't just acting, it was a declaration, a reclaiming of a self the world had tried to erase. As the scene neared its climax, Nia's voice soared, her pain and power intertwining, leaving the crowd suspended in a silence that felt sacred. Ethan, now fully immersed, delivered his next line with conviction, but it was Nia who held the room. Her sea-green uniform, once a symbol of servitude, now seemed a costume in a play of her own making. The lights burned brighter, the chair a silent witness to her triumph. As the scene paused, the crowd's silence was deafening, a testament to the power shift Victor hadn't foreseen. Nia stood, her breath steady, her heart alight, ready to let her past rewrite the present. The stage lights burned brighter, as if drawn to Nia Jackson's radiant presence, her sea-green uniform a defiant blaze against a stark backdrop. Her sleek hair, tied in a neat bun, framed her face like a sculptor's masterpiece, her beauty commanding the silence that gripped the Gilded Forks ballroom. The lone chair beside her stood forgotten, a relic of a scene now transcended, as Nia's voice, raw, resonant, alive, held the 150 elite guests in a thrall they hadn't anticipated. Ethan Grayson, her unlikely stage partner, stood frozen, his eyes wide with awe, his own lines as Stanley fading into the echo of Nia's power. The piano's mournful notes wove through her words, amplifying the heartbreak she poured into Blanche Dubois, a role that felt like her own soul laid bare. Nia paused, her breath a controlled rhythm, and stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the crowd. The guests, once eager to mock, sat spellbound, their champagne flutes abandoned, their bets a distant shame. She began a monologue, not from a streetcar named Desire, but one she'd crafted in her Broadway days, a searing testament to surviving false accusations. "I stood in shadows," she said, her voice a low, trembling fire. "Accused by those who envied light they couldn't touch. They tore my name, my truth, but not my heart." Each word carried the weight of her past as Nia Brooks, a Broadway legend betrayed by a colleague's lie, her career shattered by whispers of theft. The crowd leaned forward, their breaths held as her pain became theirs. Her gestures, precise yet fluid, painted a story of loss and resilience. Her sea-green uniform, once a symbol of servitude, now seemed a costume in a play of her own making, her bun a crown of unyielding dignity. The monologue wove through betrayal, colleagues who'd smiled while plotting, audiences who'd turned away, a world that judged her by her skin and her fall. "But shadows don't define me," she declared, her voice rising, a clarion call that sent shivers through the room. "I am the light I carry, the truth I speak." The words, born from years of silent rehearsals in empty rooms, struck like lightning, electrifying the air. Lydia Hale, the theater critic, gripped her notepad, her silver hair glinting as she whispered, "My God, she's extraordinary." Her earlier skepticism had vanished, replaced by a reverence that mirrored the crowd's shifting mood. A tycoon in the front row dabbed his eyes. A socialite's smirk melted into stunned silence. Ethan, caught in Nia's orbit, forgot his lines entirely, his face alight with admiration, his role as Stanley no longer a match for her brilliance. He stepped back, yielding the stage, his blue eyes reflecting a respect that bordered on reverence. Victor Grayson, leaning against his pillar, felt the room slip from his grasp. His whiskey glass trembled, his smirk gone, replaced by a dawning dread. "This is impossible," he muttered, his voice a hoarse whisper, lost in the piano's crescendo. His gray eyes darted to his wife, Eleanor, who stood rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. A theater enthusiast who'd prided herself on her lessons, Eleanor saw in Nia a mastery she could never claim. "She's better than me," she whispered to a friend, her voice breaking, her admission a quiet surrender to the truth unfolding before her. Marcus, the waiter, stood discreetly near the stage, his phone capturing every moment. Nia's searing monologue, the crowd's rapt silence, Victor's unraveling composure. His weathered face glowed with pride, his memory of Nia Brooks at the Lyceum Theater now alive in this improbable stage. He adjusted his angle, ensuring Victor's shock was framed, a silent promise to Nia that this moment would echo beyond these walls. The crowd, once a chorus of scorn, now sat as witnesses to a transformation. Their bets forgotten, their assumptions crumbling under Nia's undeniable power. Nia's voice soared, her monologue reaching its climax. "You can break my stage, my name, but not my soul," she said, her eyes blazing, locking onto Victor for a fleeting moment. The glance was a challenge, a reminder of her demand for an apology, not just for her, but for every soul judged by skin or station. The piano slowed, its notes fading, but Nia's presence filled the silence, her sea green uniform a beacon, her bun a testament to her unbroken spirit. The crowd's silence was profound, a sacred pause that spoke louder than their earlier laughter. Ethan, recovering, stepped forward, his voice softer now, as if afraid to shatter the moment. "Nia," he whispered, off script, his admiration breaking through his character. She nodded, a subtle acknowledgement, her focus unshaken. Lydia's pen scratched furiously, her words already forming a review that would shake Manhattan's elite. "I know this style," she murmured, her memory straining toward a name she couldn't yet recall. The guests, their faces a mix of awe and unease, felt the room's power shift, no longer Victor's to command. Victor's hand shook, his whiskey spilling slightly, a mirror to the coffee stain that had sparked this night. "Who the hell is she?" he hissed, his voice betraying a fear he couldn't name. Nia, standing tall, her breath steady, felt the stage beneath her feet as if it were home. Her monologue had bared her soul, but it was only the beginning. The crowd, the lights, the chair, all were hers now, a stage reclaimed from a world that had tried to erase her. As the scene paused, the silence held a promise. This was no longer Victor's game. The stage lights burned brighter, as if drawn to Nia Jackson's radiant presence, her sea green uniform a defiant blaze against the stark backdrop. Her sleek hair, tied in a neat bun, framed her face like a sculptor's masterpiece, her beauty commanding the silence that gripped the Gilded Forks ballroom. The lone chair beside her stood forgotten, a relic of a scene now transcended, as Nia's voice, raw, resonant, alive, held the 150 elite guests in a thrall they hadn't anticipated. Ethan Grayson, her unlikely stage partner, stood frozen, his eyes wide with awe, his own lines as Stanley fading into the echo of Nia's power. The piano's mournful notes wove through her words, amplifying the heartbreak she poured into Blanche Dubois, a role that felt like her own soul laid bare. Nia paused, her breath a controlled rhythm, and stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the crowd. The guests, once eager to mock, sat spellbound, their champagne flutes abandoned, their bets a distant shame. She began a monologue, not from a streetcar named Desire, but one she'd crafted in her Broadway days, a searing testament to surviving false accusations. "I stood in shadows," she said, her voice a low, trembling fire, "accused by those who envied light they couldn't touch. They tore my name, my truth, but not my heart." Each word carried the weight of her past as Nia Brooks, a Broadway legend betrayed by a colleague's lie, her career shattered by whispers of theft. The crowd leaned forward, their breaths held as her pain became theirs. Her gestures, precise yet fluid, painted a story of loss and resilience. Her sea green uniform, once a symbol of servitude, now seemed a costume in a play of her own making, her bun a crown of unyielding dignity. The monologue wove through betrayal, colleagues who'd smiled while plotting, audiences who'd turned away, a world that judged her by her skin and her fall. "But shadows don't define me," she declared, her voice rising, a clarion call that sent shivers through the room. "I am the light I carry, the truth I speak." The words, born from years of silent rehearsals in empty rooms, struck like lightning, electrifying the air. Lydia Hale, the theater critic, gripped her notepad, her silver hair glinting as she whispered, "My God, she's extraordinary." Her earlier skepticism had vanished, replaced by a reverence that mirrored the crowd's shifting mood. A tycoon in the front row dabbed his eyes. A socialite's smirk melted into stunned silence. Ethan, caught in Nia's orbit, forgot his lines entirely, his face alight with admiration. His role as Stanley no longer a match for her brilliance. He stepped back, yielding the stage, his blue eyes reflecting a respect that bordered on reverence. Victor Grayson, leaning against his pillar, felt the room slip from his grasp. His whiskey glass trembled, his smirk gone, replaced by a dawning dread. "This is impossible," he muttered, his voice a hoarse whisper, lost in the piano's crescendo. His gray eyes darted to his wife, Eleanor, who stood rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. A theater enthusiast who'd prided herself on her lessons, Eleanor saw in Nia a mastery she could never claim. "She's better than me," she whispered to a friend, her voice breaking, her admission a quiet surrender to the truth unfolding before her. Marcus the waiter stood discreetly near the stage, his phone capturing every moment. Nia's searing monologue, the crowd's rapt silence, Victor's unraveling composure. His weathered face glowed with pride, his memory of Nia Brooks at the Lyceum Theater now alive in this improbable stage. He adjusted his angle, ensuring Victor's shock was framed, a silent promise to Nia that this moment would echo beyond these walls. The crowd, once a chorus of scorn, now sat as witnesses to a transformation, their bets forgotten, their assumptions crumbling under Nia's undeniable power. Nia's voice soared, her monologue reaching its climax. "You can break my stage, my name, but not my soul," she said, her eyes blazing, locking onto Victor for a fleeting moment. The glance was a challenge, a reminder of her demand for an apology, not just for her, but for every soul judged by skin or station. The piano slowed, its notes fading, but Nia's presence filled the silence, her sea-green uniform a beacon, her bun a testament to her unbroken spirit. The crowd's silence was profound, a sacred pause that spoke louder than their earlier laughter. Ethan, recovering, stepped forward, his voice softer now, as if afraid to shatter the moment. "Nia," he whispered, off script, his admiration breaking through his character. She nodded, a subtle acknowledgement, her focus unshaken. Lydia's pen scratched furiously, her words already forming a review that would shake Manhattan's elite. "I know this style," she murmured, her memory straining toward a name she couldn't yet recall. The guests, their faces a mix of awe and unease, felt the room's power shift, no longer Victor's to command. Victor's hand shook, his whiskey spilling slightly, a mirror to the coffee stain that had sparked this night. "Who the hell is she?" he hissed, his voice betraying a fear he couldn't name. Nia, standing tall, her breath steady, felt the stage beneath her feet as if it were home. Her monologue had bared her soul, but it was only the beginning. The crowd, the lights, the chair, all were hers now, a stage reclaimed from a world that had tried to erase her. As the scene paused, the silence held a promise. This was no longer Victor's game. The applause in the Gilded Fork's main hall thundered, a tide of awe washing over the 150 elite guests, their eyes fixed on Nia Jackson, who stood resolute, her sea-green uniform a radiant defiance, her sleek hair bun a crown of unbowed dignity. The stage lights lingered on her, as if reluctant to release their star, while the faded curtain framed a moment that had rewritten the night's script. Victor Grayson, isolated by his pillar, clutched his empty whiskey glass, his gray eyes wild with a fury he could no longer mask. Ethan Grayson, stepping off the stage, faced his father, his blue eyes blazing with a resolve that shook the room's fragile hierarchy. Lydia Hale, the theater critic, stood tall, her silver hair glinting, her voice still echoing with Nia's true name. Nia Brooks, Broadway's lost legend. Nia's gaze, sharp and unyielding, pinned Victor where he stood. "You made a promise, Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice a steady flame, cutting through the fading applause. "An apology for your prejudice, or is your word as hollow as your bet?" The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of shock and expectation, their earlier scorn now a bitter aftertaste. A tycoon shifted uncomfortably. A socialite's diamond choker gleamed as she whispered, "He can't dodge this." Victor's face twisted, his refusal a fortress he clung to desperately. "I owe you nothing," he growled, his voice low but venomous. This was a jest, a game. You're still just a maid. The room gasped. The word maid, a jarring echo of his prejudice, and the crowd's mood turned. Lydia stepped forward, her authority commanding silence. A maid, she said, her tone sharp as a blade. That was Nia Brooks, a talent I lauded in my reviews. You've been outplayed, Victor. Her words, amplified by her reputation, struck like a gavel, and the guests nodded, their allegiance shifting. Ethan moved beside Nia, his tailored jacket creasing as he faced his father. You're wrong, Dad, he said, his voice clear, resolute. This wasn't a game. It was a challenge, and she's won, not just the stage, but respect. Victor's hand shook, his empty glass a symbol of his dwindling power. Respect? He spat, stepping forward, his eyes darting to the crowd, seeking allies and finding none. You think this changes anything? She's nothing. But his voice cracked, betraying a fear deeper than pride, a fear of losing the control he'd wielded like a scepter, a fear rooted in a past where trust had burned him. A memory flickered, unbidden, a minority colleague's betrayal, long ago fueling his bias. But it was no excuse now. The crowd's eyes, once adoring, now judged him, their whispers a chorus of disapproval. Marcus, the waiter, stood near the stage, his phone still recording, capturing Victor's unraveling and the crowd's turning tide. His weathered face held a quiet triumph, his loyalty to Nia a silent rebellion against the elite's cruelty. He uploaded the video discreetly, its contents, Nia's performance, her revelation, Victor's defiance, already rippling toward the outside world, a spark that would ignite a media firestorm. A guest nearby, catching Marcus's movement, murmured, "That's going viral." The words were a warning Victor didn't hear, his focus locked on Nia, whose presence seemed to grow, her sea-green uniform a banner of her victory. Eleanor, Victor's wife, touched his arm, her face pale, her voice a plea. "Victor, stop this," she whispered, her theater-trained poise crumbling. "She's earned it. Apologize." But Victor shook her off, his rage a mask for his fear. "Never," he hissed, his eyes blazing at Nia. "You think you've won? This is my world." Yet the crowd's silence told a different story, their earlier bets now a mark of shame. A financier turned away. A socialite's applause for Nia lingered, defiant. Nia stepped forward, her bun gleaming under the lights, her beauty a quiet storm. "Your world judged me by my skin and my job," she said, her voice resonant, unyielding. "But truth doesn't bend to your pride. Honor your word, or let this room see who you are." The challenge, delivered with a calm that shook the chandeliers, drew gasps. Lydia nodded, her pen scratching, already framing the night as a cultural reckoning. The crowd's murmurs grew, a demand for justice, their eyes boring into Victor. Ethan raised his voice, addressing the room. "The bet wasn't about marriage," he said, his tone firm, redefining his father's words. "It was about respect. Nia's earned it, and I honor that." His words sparked applause, a wave that drowned Victor's protests. He extended a hand to Nia, not as a suitor, but as an ally. His blue eyes steady. Nia nodded, her expression softening, her heart swelling. Not for a proposal, but for a stand against prejudice. The crowd's applause grew, a tide of approval for her truth. Victor, cornered, felt the weight of their stares. His voice faltered, then steadied, his apology a grudging surrender. "Fine," he muttered, his eyes avoiding Nia's. "I misjudged you. I'm sorry." The words, though forced, were a crack in his armor, and the crowd exhaled, some clapping, others whispering in shock. Marcus's video, now spreading online, ensured the world would hear it. Nia stood tall, her sea-green uniform a symbol of her triumph, her bun a testament to her unbroken spirit. The hall, once Victor's domain, was hers now, its hierarchy shattered by a truth he'd never foreseen. The echoes of applause faded, but Nia Jackson's victory lingered, a beacon that outshone the gilded forks chandeliers. Her sea-green attire, now a tailored dress in the same vibrant hue, her sleek hair still tied in a neat bun, gleamed under the Harlem sun as she stood before her new theater school. its doors open to a crowd of diverse young actors. The building, a renovated warehouse pulsing with life, bore her name, the Nia Brooks Center for the Arts. Its walls, adorned with murals of stages and spotlights, stood as a testament to a truth reclaimed. The air buzzed with excitement, a stark contrast to the elitist gala where she'd once been scorned. Nia's dark eyes, radiant with purpose, surveyed her students, their faces alight with dreams she'd vowed to nurture. The world had changed since that night. Marcus's video, capturing Nia's performance and Victor Grayson's downfall, had spread like wildfire online, its title, Billionaire Humbled by Broadway Legend, igniting millions of views. The backlash was swift. Grayson Enterprises faced a torrent of criticism, its stock wavering as clients withdrew, repelled by Victor's exposed prejudice. Nia, once a maid in a sea-green uniform, had become a global symbol of resilience, her story inspiring donations that funded the school. Offers flooded in, Hollywood scripts, Broadway revivals. But Nia declined them all, her heart set on teaching, on giving others the stage she'd nearly lost. Ethan Grayson stood by her side, no longer the hesitant heir, but a leader remaking his family's legacy. His tailored jacket was gone, replaced by a simple shirt, his blue eyes bright with conviction. He'd taken the reins of Grayson Enterprises, steering it toward diversity and social good. His first act, a generous donation to Nia's school. "You changed everything, Nia," he said, his voice warm as they shared coffee outside the center, the aroma mingling with the scent of fresh paint. "Even my father." Nia's smile was soft, her bun catching the sunlight, her beauty a quiet echo of the stage she'd reclaimed. "I didn't change him," she replied. "I showed him what he couldn't see." Victor's world had crumbled. His grudging apology that night, captured on Marcus's video, became a millstone, replayed across screens as proof of his hubris. A private letter arrived at Nia's school, its words halting but sincere. "I misjudged you, Miss Brooks. I'm learning." Victor, stripped of his company's helm, now worked as a shadow of his former self, a consultant in a small firm, his empire reduced to a cautionary tale. Eleanor, his wife, had left, seeking solace in solitude, her theater dreams overshadowed by Nia's brilliance. Yet Victor's letter hinted at growth, a crack in the armor of a man who'd once thought wealth defined worth. Lydia Hale, the critic whose voice had validated Nia, now stood inside the school, a guest instructor guiding a group of teens through stage techniques. Her silver hair gleamed as she laughed, her pen replaced by a director's clipboard, her reverence for Nia evident in every gesture. "You're building something eternal here," she told Nia, her eyes scanning the vibrant classroom where students of every hue rehearsed with passion. Nia nodded, her sea-green dress a nod to her past, its vibrancy a promise of her future. "This isn't just for me," she said. "It's for them. For anyone told they don't belong." The school's opening drew crowds from local kids to international reporters, all captivated by Nia's story. A group of children from a community center where Nia had once taught presented her with a small fund, pennies and dollars scraped together, to keep teaching. Nia's eyes glistened, her voice steady as she accepted. "We'll make this bigger," she promised, her words igniting cheers. The center was more than a school. It was a movement, a stage where dreams defied prejudice, where talent trumped bias. As Nia and Ethan walked through the school's garden, its flowers blooming under their care, she reflected on her journey. "I lost my stage once," she said, her voice soft but resolute, her bun a symbol of her unbroken spirit. "But I built a new one, for everyone." Ethan's hand brushed hers, not in romance but in partnership, his smile warm. "You've changed us all," he said, "even those who fought it." His leadership, inspired by Nia's courage, had reshaped Grayson Enterprises, its new mission a mirror to her school's inclusivity. The crowd outside roared, their applause a distant echo of that gala night, now transformed into a celebration of truth. Nia stood before them, her sea-green dress a beacon, her heart full. "This is our stage," she called, her voice soaring. "Claim yours no matter who tries to take it." The words, a final act of defiance, sparked cheers that shook the Harlem streets. Nia Jackson's journey, from a scorned maid to a Broadway legend reborn, ignites a spark of defiance against prejudice, her sea-green silhouette a beacon of hope. Her triumph at the Gilded Fork and the rise of her Harlem school remind us that truth and talent can shatter even the tallest walls of arrogance. What did Nia's story stir in you? Have you faced a moment where your worth was underestimated, only to prove them wrong? Share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from, day or night? Comment 1 if this tale moved you, 0 if it missed the mark. Thank you for joining this saga of resilience. Your presence lights our stage. Subscribe for more stories that uplift and inspire, and we'll meet again soon under new spotlights where dreams defy the odds.